So now we're going to do a brief summary of the lessons dealing with percent change, application of percent, and interest. So by the end of this class period, you should be able to calculate the percent of change on an amount. You should be able to determine the cost of markup / discount and also sales tax and tip. And also you should be able to calculate simple interest. So let's look at the starting point here. Before we get going, I want to remind you, we're going to use this proportions piece a lot here. It says here, percents using a proportion is over of is equal to percent over 100. Now, that's one way of thinking about it. Another way to think about it is that it refers to, the is part here refers to the part of something. So let's say you got 75 points on a test out of however many points. So you got 75 points on the test. Then you have the of part represents the total amount. So if the of if the total amount was 80% and the score you got was 75, to figure out your percent, what you do is you go ahead and you put the part over the whole, and that's equal to percent over 100. And then you just cross multiply and solve, and you're going to end up with this value here. So really, every time the is going to be the part, because that's the equivalent of the percent number, and the of is the total amount, and that's why it's 100 here, because we're changing basically the fraction to being 100 over 100, and then we're just figuring out what the part is of 100 as a fraction. So now let's move on to the lesson for today. Percent of change. Now, percent of change is just the amount of increase or decrease over the original amount. So what you just have to do is you have to go ahead and figure out what the difference is. So in this case here, this is an increase, obviously, because it goes up. So the difference is 5. The original amount is 20. So when you divide the top by the bottom, that's going to give you a percent of change, or your percent increase in this case here. So 5 divided by 20 is going to be 25.25, which is 25%. So it's a 25% increase. For this one here, same sort of idea, 150 to 189. The difference is 39. What's the original amount? 150. So when we figure it out, that's going to be equal to 0.26, which is 26%, a 26% increase. Same rules with a decrease. Here it's a decrease, but it's still 5, and the original amount was still 20. So here it's a decrease, but it still is 25, and so it's a 25% decrease. And that makes perfect sense, because 25% increase or decrease, it's going to be the same amount, just one's going up and one's going down. For this one here, the amount of decrease, the difference between the two is 40. That's going to be over 75. And that's going to be equal to 50, or 0.53 with a bar over it, so it goes on forever that way. So this is going to be 53.3%. That's the amount of a percent decrease. So let's look here. Now on your paper, I'd like you to try these 4 problems. And you might want to go back and watch this piece here just to see that it makes sense. But here is what you need to do. Just do those 4 problems. You can certainly use a calculator and put them in the right place on the sheet. So the next thing we're going to talk about is what's called percent of markup. Percent of markup is the percent that a seller charges over what they paid for a product. What they paid for the product is called the wholesale price. Then the extra part that they charge on, that's where your profit is. That's the percent markup. So if the percent markup on a product is 30%, The new cost is 100 plus 30%, so it's equal to 130%. If the percent markup is 110%, then the new cost is going to be 100% because that's the original cost, plus, so when that happens, you're going to go ahead and just add them together. It's going to be 210%. So what I want to look at here is here. The wholesale price of something is $13. If that's the case, and the markup percent is 110%, that means it's $13. It's going to be the original amount, and then it's going to be 100 is the cost, 100% is the cost, original cost, but then you have this 110% on top of that. So the total new price is going to be 210% of that original price. So what's going to happen here is that this is the original amount, and if you want, you could just multiply by 2.1 times 13. That's one way of doing it. Or you could set it up as this: 210 over 100 is equal to, that's just the percent part, and then 13 was the original amount, and now we have a new, more expensive piece here. And either way you do these two problems, you're going to end up with the same value, which is 27.3, and that's going to be the new price that you're going to sell with that markup percent included. Same thing here. So what you have is the markup cost is going to be 100%. So you start off with your 100%, and then it's actually going to be 200% is going to be the new cost. Again, you can do it this way if you want. The value here over $7 is equal to 200 over 100. And then you're just going to end up being, the value is going to be 14. Or if you wanted to, you could just go 2.0 times 7, and that's going to give you 14 as well. So that's how it works in terms of percent markup. Percent discount is a similar idea. What it is instead, though, is that if something, it says here, percent discount when something is lower than the original cost. If it says it's 30% off the original price, then it actually now costs 70% of the original price. If you wanted to, you could calculate 30% and subtract it from the original. That's perfectly fine. But if you want to do it more quickly, you can just multiply it by 70% of the cost. So if the lower price of something is 60% off, then it now costs, if it's 60% off the original price, it now costs 40% of the original price. So if a shirt is originally priced at $20 and has a discount of 25%, what's the new price of the shirt? Well, the new price of the shirt is going to be 20 times 75%. Or alternatively, if you want to set up proportional-wise, then it's going to be, let's see here, it's going to be this here, 20 is going to be the original price, so we put that on the bottom. 75 up here, and then this is going to be our value that we're going to be solving for. So 75 times 20 divided by 100, the new cost of the shirt is going to be $15. So if the shirt is instead $70 and the percent of discount is 30%, then the shirt now costs 70% of the original amount. So if you wanted to, you could do 70 times 70%. That's one possibility. You could multiply it by 30% and then subtract. It's going to give you the exact same result. So 70 times 70%. And if you wanted to do it the other way, set up as a proportion. Here is going to be your original shirt is going to be $70. That was when it was 100% of the cost. That's why it's there. So now it's 70% of that. And you're going to end up with $49 is what the cost of the shirt is now going to be. So I'd like you to do these problems here on there. And feel free to back up a little bit if you need to look onto these other two slides to see how to do them if you need to. So now we're going to move on to simple interest. Now interest is just the money that is paid for the use of money. And basically, if you think about it, there's these different terms. Principal, that's the amount of money that's loaned or borrowed. Simple interest is when it's only paying on the principal. We're just going to deal with that today. The annual interest rate, that's the per year interest rate. The balance of the account, that's the total amount. Like if you put in $5,000 and then you get a year's worth of interest, it's just going to be $5,000 plus the year's worth of interest. And the formula, it works out to being interest is equal to principal times rate as a percent, and then as a percent, and then that times time in years. Actually, we should go ahead and change this. If you want to go ahead and do this, change this into a decimal, and that's probably actually easier. So interest is equal to principal times rate times time. So if you would want to find the interest on $1,250 deposited at a 4% interest rate for 10 years, what you would do is this. The interest is equal to $1,250, that's the principal, times 0.04, that's the decimal equivalent of 4%, times 10, that's the amount of years. And you're going to end up with just $500. So it's just plugging in numbers here. Same sort of idea here. Find the interest and balance of the account. This is just going to be interest is equal to principal times rate times time. So the interest is going to be equal to 600 times 0.027 times, oh, I didn't do that before, so I'll do that. Times 5.5. And that's going to give me my simple interest, which is equal to $89.1. Now it says here find the interest and the balance of the account. To figure out the balance, I just have to add it to the original amount. So the account balance, just write that down as B, it's going to be $689.10, because that's just adding to this original amount again. So for this problem here, it's the same idea. Interest is equal to, well, it's $100 is the principal, 8%, 0.08. And then times 6 months. It's always done in years, so this is actually going to be 0.5 years, because 6 months is 0.5 of a year, and that's going to end up giving me a grand whopping total of $4. And again, that's the interest, and then $104 is going to be the balance. You might want to pause it here because I'm going to give you two more problems. I need to erase this slide.